Okay, we'll get started. Hi everyone, thanks for coming. So today we're going to be looking at a couple of different types of throws, and when are some good times to be thinking about throwing them. So just to save time, so this session isn't too long, I'm not going to be going into specific technique stuff, but I'm going to put some links in, but some good videos to watch if you're wanting to get a bit more info on actually like how to throw them and good tips for that. So the throws we're looking at are, so firstly we're going to be looking at overheads, so hammers and scubas, and then also we're going to be looking at throwing IO and roll curve flicks and backhands. So I'll go into each one separately and talk about what they are. So firstly, looking at hammer. So this is two examples of a hammer. You see nice back-to-back hammers. So what's really important to look at here is, so you're starting with the hammer with your arm lifted over your head and holding the disc, it's hard to see, sort of at 45 degrees, and the disc will go up to the left if you're right-handed and then slowly come back down like this. So it's curving up this way and then back down. That's like a pretty standard hammer. It's possible to throw hammers other ways. So this is an example of a slightly different kind of hammer where it's still, you're bringing it up over your head, but it flies slightly differently. I just put that in there as a demonstration, but most of the time when you're thinking about throwing hammers, it's going to go just up to the left and back down again. Next throw is a scuba. So this is kind of curving the opposite way to a hammer. So you can see he holds it sort of more at head height, still kind of at 45 degrees, and it goes up this way, and then it'll curve back down to the left. So it sort of goes, instead of going up and around like this, it kind of goes up this way. And then the third kind of overhead that you'll normally see is either called a knife or a blade. So this is kind of throwing more just like directly straight up. So it's very common in indoors users dump throws, but it can be a bit more difficult to catch. So first one we'll look at outside of overheads is looking at IOs. So this is called an inside out throw. So this means that you're starting with the inside edge higher up than the outside edge. So I'll try and pause it when you can see. So you can kind of see he's pointing the disc, the bottom of the disc downwards. So this will fly up and then curve back down. So that was just showing the shape, but normally when you see people throw IOs, it would be a lot shorter range. So this is like a short range example of what IOs do. And then last thing, sometimes called outside ins, but mostly called roll curves. Is probably the most common and the easiest to throw. It's just the opposite of an IO. So the outside edge starts higher up and it will curve around. So if people want to put in the chat, maybe just say a throw and then put a good time to use it. So you could either say something for like generally overheads, or if you want to say something for like scuba or IOs, anything. Roll curves are also the main throw in disc space. A very good point. So this will be helpful for both normal frisbee and disc space. rolls are good dump throws. Yeah, so I agree. It's good. Roll curves are good for dump throws because if you have the two defenders between you and your dump, you can roll curve it around the defenders and put it out slightly for your dump to run onto. Knives, use them to score when close to their end zone indoors. Yeah, so something we've talked about before is floods, which is where you have, in indoors, you have one person out of the end zone being the chase, so they run around after the disc, and the other four in the end zone. So knives are really useful for that because you can throw them directly over like the wall in flood. Eyes are good for big curves. Yeah, so that's something I'm going to talk about in a bit. If you're trying to throw further, eyes are really useful because if you throw it a bit roll curvy, then often it'll end up traveling less far. Whereas if you throw it IO, then it will tend to flatten out and keep going for longer. So yeah, IOs are really good for big throws. Okay. So now these are some ones that I thought of. So starting with overheads, good time to throw them if it's not windy or you're indoors. So a big problem with overheads sometimes is that they can be disrupted a lot by wind. But yeah, if it's not windy, it's great time to make the most of that. So this, something I thought I'd put in, is an example of the famous Ubu pull play. So we'll watch it through and then we can talk about it a bit. So a really nice scuba from him. So indoors, you see lots of very big scubas and very big hammers just because you can sort of throw over the whole pitch. So this is the Ubu pull play. You see they just immediately receive the pull, and what they do is they'll fake their dump, and the dump will just run deep, and they'll go and run and catch it. So if you watch an Ubu game indoors, you'll see they do that like every other time that they start on offense, and it's very effective, especially if people aren't ready for it. Another thing with overheads is when you're outdoors or indoors, throwing over a zone. So if we watch this clip, you can see that they, once the zone sets up, you see that they're sort of struggling to get the disc through the zone, and there's not that many free options, except there's someone who's free completely on the other side of the pitch. So number 20 is completely free. So this is a great opportunity to use an overhead, and then it allows him, well, unfortunate turnover, but in lots of situations it allows you to like sort of just snowball a bit and make lots of really good progress. Okay, next one is to break the force. So what I mean by breaking the force is throwing to where the person who's forcing you doesn't want you to throw to. So this first one is a little scuba example of if you're trying to get your dump throw out and you can't, then you can potentially do a little scuba. A quick disclaimer is you shouldn't always be trying to do this in like a dump throw position. If that is a throw that you can get out easier, then that's probably a safer option. So maybe if Neil hadn't been as tight on this side, stopping the dump, then just like a nice roll curve backhand would have been a better option. But since this force was really tight, he ends up using a scuba to get over it. And then now this is using a scuba. Instead of strictly breaking the force, this is more about throwing onto the break side. So you see this is a backhand force. So this person is standing on this side trying to force Sid to throw a backhand. So Dan's actually made a really good cut here, and probably this backhand could have just been thrown to get free. But instead Dan does a good bounce cut, which we also talked about last week a little bit, and gets to be on the other side, and Sid does a really good scuba over into this breakside corner. Now this is an example of being able to do the same thing but with an IO throw. So again, the force is backhand. Well, it's actually quite a straight force actually. Sorry. So this is yeah, you can see the force is quite flat, and he manages to literally just like sneak it between 3 people, which you wouldn't have been able to do without quite a bit of IO on it. So yeah, it's a good time to use IO, and probably actually the time I use IO the most. And this goes back to what I was talking about a bit earlier, is if you putting a bit of IO on either a huck or on a pull, to get it to go that bit further. So you can see it starts off kind of IO, but then by the time it gets to it, well, it's still a bit IO, but it's mostly flattened out. It's kind of an unfortunate drop, but a really, really good throw from Kenji. And then this is, last thing, the main use for roll curves is throwing around the defenders. So you can see a really good example in this clip. So this white defender was completely stopping this throw, but being able to do this massive roll curve around meant that it could get to the free player, which was really good. So yeah. Okay, now passing over to Oli for something a little bit more interactive.
Should I try sharing my screen? I think that might make it easier.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I can't figure out how to do it. It will only let me share stuff that's in my Chrome.
Is the video like open? Like, is it not minimized? Because I think it doesn't like it if you have to, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was it. There we go. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to be going through some examples to just test the knowledge that we just learned. If you want, I'm going to play a clip and I'll pause it and then talk about it a little bit, and you can try and guess what throw the person on disc should be making, sort of how they should throw the disc. So I'll just give everyone just sort of 10-15 seconds to have a think about it, and then if you want to put an answer in the chat, feel free to do that, or I'll just go through it. So we'll just go through the first one here. Team in black finds himself on the disc playing against a zone, and they get kind of stuck on the sideline, and they've got 5 white defenders here, all really close in, stopping anything sort of too short. And the man on disc really wants to find someone free sort of outside of this little box here. So he wants to try and throw it to this person. What is the best way of trying to get it to this guy here that he can use? What throw we've thought about so far? I'll just give you 10 seconds to think about it. Okay, so the throw that the guy decides to use is a hammer. The The reason for that is because the force is really tight and all of these people are really close in, preventing any throws sort of just straight through. If I play it on just a little bit, you see that they tighten up even more, preventing any sort of throws through the middle. So it's much easier to just throw it over the top with the hammer, and so you can just get free. And it just opens up all of this space because you've got 5 white defenders, obviously 7 in total, all just in this one little area. So everything downfield is wide open, and that creates loads of space, allowing an easy deep shot. Okay. So moving on to the next one. So I'm just looking what Dan's put. Yeah, let's do polls. Sure, I'll give you some options. I'll try and think of some options. All right. So this next one, again, we have the disc on the sideline, and for this one, this is quite a high-level throw, but the person on disc sees that the man at the back of the end zone is sort of being sagged off. See, his man's looking at the disc. He's not looking at his man. He's about 5 yards away from his man as well, so he's really free. And we want to try and think about the best way that the person on disc can throw it to the person at the back of the end zone. Potentially, potentially a hammer, maybe a big huck or a scuba. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and vote in the poll. Cool. So yeah, all votes for hammer so far. Hammer's definitely the option we want to go for because of the sort of trajectory. As Phoebe talked about earlier, the hammer's going to go up and then come back down to the right-hand side into this space at the back of the end zone, which is where you can find the guy wide open, giving the defender absolutely no chance. So as you can see, the trajectory comes back down to the right perfectly. Okay, next one. So, man makes a nice catch up line, and he's going to see his receiver throw sort of up line. I'll just find it back a bit. He wants to throw his receiver up line, but is trying to think about the best way of throwing the up line. Probably won't do a poll for this one. Just have a think about the best way. So he's obviously going to throw a flick because of the way the force is, but how he wants to throw that flick is really important to get the disc to this guy here. Just give you 10 seconds to think about that. There's just not that many options, seeing as though I already showed it. So for this one, it's really important that we get the disc to sit in the end zone, allowing our receiver to run onto the disc. He makes a really early decision to make the throw. He obviously has a lot of faith in his receiver that they're going to be able to get free. And you want to throw it with a little bit of IO because it makes the disc just sit a little bit more and allows the receiver to run onto it. As we can see, it's actually a really easy catch in the end. Very nice play. Okay, we'll do a poll for this one for sure. Okay. Disc sees this cutter in the top left-hand side of the screen going deep. Not a lot of separation, but from watching all of this game, whoever's on disc loves to throw deep. So they want to shoot it deep. What's the best way of making the huck? Are they going to try and throw a big roll curve, or throw it flat with the flick? Are they going to step around and try and throw a backhand? what are they going to do? Yeah, so everyone's voted for the roll flick, which is definitely the best option. It's important to note that because the cut's so close to the sideline, you don't want loads and loads of roll because it makes the throw really hard to make. So the throw is definitely going to be a flick, and it's pretty flat, but just a little bit of roll so it goes into the receiver. Really, really nice throw. Okay. Have an upline throw, and then person on disc sees this man in the middle. I think that's number 59 or 8 or 5 or something. He's going deep. From our point of view, it's clear that no one's going to be able to catch him because people deep aren't sprinting and they're going facing, one of them's facing the wrong way, and he's got loads of separation on his man. So what is the best way of throwing a deep shot to him as he inevitably goes deep? Basically the same options as last time. No curvy ones. As nice as a high release backhand would be, because of the way the force is, would probably make it a lot harder to throw. So instead, they're probably going to throw a flick. This time, although the disc is on the sideline, the cut's in the middle of the field, so there's a lot more space to work with, so you could probably put a little bit more roll curve on it, which is what happens here. Look at all of these people in the middle. No chance of a high release backhand, Sid. That's much easier, let's be honest. Okay. Right, next one. So this one's kind of hard to see, but what's going to happen is off screen, this guy on the far right hand side of your screen, guy in white, is going to make a nice deep cut, and it's going to get quite free deep. So the person on disc obviously wants to throw it to them. What's going to be the best way of doing that? Again, basically the same options. So, looks like people are going with the IO forehand. Some votes now for roll forehand as well. Wilson and Sid, no surprises there. As we sort of look at the picture, all of the defenders are sort of on the far side of the screen. Here, and even he is on sort of the far side of the pitch from our point of view. So throwing an IO sort of in this area would give our defender more of an opportunity to get a play on the disc. What ends up happening is they throw a roll forehand to the other side, to this near side of the pitch, and because you can see the defender is just on that far side, it allows our receiver to stop the defender having any chance of getting it. So that's why we want to throw a roll flick in that situation. So it comes around into our receiver, allowing them to very easily milk the disc for the score. Okay, next one. So white comes out in a rather sort of junky look where they aren't particularly tight. They're sort of trying to figure out who they're going to mark. Person on disc sees number 9 here wide open, got no one within sort of 5-10 yards of him. What's the best way of getting the disc to this player? Lots of good options here, probably. So probably not many wrong answers. So, knife and scuba are probably both good options. Generally, I would much prefer a scuba just because it's much safer, which is what ends up happening here. It just allows you to just pop it over the top of the force really simply, so that only the receiver who's intended has a play on the disc, and it's basically just a free sort of 5-10 yard game without too much effort when it isn't windy. Really good time to use the scuba. Okay, next one. So the disc kind of gets stuck on the sideline here, and as we can see, the force is really tight. Our man on disc wants to pass it to the person just in front of him on the left side of the screen. As we can see, there's no one really within 3 yards of him. His man's just off the screen. You can just about see his knee. What's probably the best way of getting him the disc sort of upfield rather than forcing him to come back? This is a tricky one. Might not be the best option that he ended up taking. So, lots of people suggesting roll backhands or forehands, throwing around the force. This is a very good option, to be honest. I think the person on disc probably chooses not to do this because he backs himself with the scuba, which is what he ends up throwing. But he very easily, well, not very easily, but he could have definitely stepped right to throw a flick roll curve, or stepped left to throw a backhand roll curve. In the end, throwing over the top, he does have like probably a good 5-6 inches on his man, so throwing a scuba over the top is a pretty easy way of getting that gain as well, creating space for a deep look. But roll curve either side, not a bad option in those situations. Nice scuba there. Love that. So blue's playing a zone. They end up swinging the disc. Person on disc here wants to reset the disc. He chooses not to take this upline option, which he probably should, but instead wants to throw it to the man on the other side of the pitch, swinging the disc. What's the best way of throwing it to him? Very spread voting. Most votes are for roll flick, but we do have some votes for everything. Although, I don't think anyone's seriously suggesting a knife. Anyway, you could throw a hammer. The reason that we probably don't want to is simply because it just isn't as safe as throwing a flick. Throwing a roll flick around, which is what he chooses to do, it's just a really safe option. Really high percentage. Probably easier to get for a hammer to go wrong than a roll flick. And there's just so much space that there's really no danger. I'll just play that again. Because in the last clip, when we suggested throwing an overhead might be a better option, the force was really tight. In this scenario, the force is, everyone's miles away, so there's no need to rush it or throw a slightly lower percentage shot of an overhead, and he can just throw the roll flick around the side of the zone. Resetting the disc, swinging the disc, really important with the zone, just moving it around and just tiring this front three out. Okay, we'll move on. So White has the disc at the front of the end zone. This man doesn't end up finding anyone free, and he resets the disc. Just want to move on a little bit more. So this is something you probably wouldn't see a lot in our games, but at a high level, occasionally. Person on disc sees the back, so obviously white is his intended receiver, and the person in blue, he can see isn't actually looking at the disc, is looking at the disc, isn't looking at his man. So how could he find him free on the break side? So how could he throw person on disc throw to the person at the back free on the break side? Again, this probably isn't necessarily the best option to take, but it is the one he ends up doing. Yeet and scuba are basically the same, so that's a lot of votes for just chucking the disc up, which is what he basically ends up doing. The scuba is really nice to use here. He throws over his force, and he can see that the person at the back is just a bit too far away from his man. So when you can throw a scuba that well, it's quite a high percentage option. And that is a really nice throw. Okay, next one. What was this one? Okay, yeah, so white ends up moving the disc up the field really nice. See, lovely hammer there. Could have included that, but it's I don't think even I would recommend that one. Person on disc sees that his cutter is going to go up line, and you can see that the force ends up moving around. Now this time we've got our cutter going up line. I believe this line here, the 15-yard line, halfway between the 10 and 20, that's like the front of the end zone. So the person on disc is trying to shoot the disc into this person. What's the best way of doing that so that they can just catch it in this front corner of the end zone? Yeah. So lots of votes for IO flick, which is definitely the best option here. We saw in one of the first examples that when we threw an upline pass, when there was loads of space out in front, that we wanted to throw it with IO, so it just sat a little bit more and allowed our receiver to run onto the disc. In this situation, there isn't enough space to do that because of the angle the cutter's running at. It's going to take him like out of the end zone. So what our thrower needs to do is just fire it into him, try and hit his chest, so he can catch it just in this front corner of the end zone, or maybe just outside. As long as he's in bounds, it's not a problem. So yeah, he's just got to fire it straight into him rather than lead him, just so he can just catch it and just and get the score. Okay, last one. So I'll just play again, just so I can pause it at the right moment. Okay, last one. Okay. Last one. Person on disc. I believe that's Jonah. He sees these two defenders both sort of heading to the right, trying to cover Jovan here. Dan Wilson and Jonah recognize this, and so Dan starts heading towards this corner of the end zone, the back corner. What's the best way that the man on disc can find him in that back corner of the end zone? Yeah. All votes for hammer, which is correct. Definitely the best option here. I'll just show you. The angle and the angle of the disc just comes back into our receiver, making it rather easy to catch. Definitely the throw makes it very nice for our receiver to catch in that situation. Depends what team you're rooting for, I guess. Okay, so that's it from me. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something. I think that's going to be the end of the stream.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming, guys. If anyone has any questions, then put them in the thing, or also if anyone's watching this on the YouTube, put questions in the comments, and I'll look. I'll keep an eye on it. Cool. Thank you.